Breaking right now, it's Meghan Markle versus Martha Stewart, as the real lifestyle doyen goes head to head with the great pretender. And this is all over the one pan pasta recipe. And what's interesting and actually very telling is that Martha Stewart has actually updated her recipe just last month when she knew what was going on to say the original and the best in the description. So Angela Levin, our royal mastermind, is with me. Angela, can we just, we'll take a look at Martha Stewart's video, which she made before Meghan, because what you will see, because we'll show you Meghan after, is this is strikingly similar. And I sort of feel like, goodness gracious me, if you're going to rip someone off, don't rip off Martha Stewart, Meghan, because she's the queen at this stuff. And clearly she's not taking it lying down. Did you see the similarities between these two recipes?
Yes, very much so, very much so. They were almost identical, I think, apart from a couple of sort of spicy things that were in there. But also, when she sent, everything was sent round, they dropped sending this particular one with the spaghetti so that nobody would see it unless they saw it on the TV. Because obviously they realized that they'd taken the whole thing and just pretended that it was theirs. And I think they were trying to get out of a good telling off, but that's a silly thing to do because we've already seen it. But when it goes around the world, it hasn't gone with the spaghetti. I mean, it's really funny. But, it's her fault. It's Meghan's fault. If you're going to keep on stealing ideas from people without actually saying thank you very much or this is what I got from so-and-so, I don't think people would mind that at all. But pretending you've always created it and you've always got it right and you're so wonderful at doing it, and people will be very, very angry about it. I think the one thing that is different is that Meghan sliced these little tomatoes into half where that weren't originally.
All right, folks, let's get straight into this. Meghan Markle just got caught copying one of the most legendary lifestyle icons of all time, Martha Stewart. And let me tell you, Martha is not happy about it. She's basically throwing some major shade, updating her recipe to say it's the original and the best. Ouch. Now watch this. This is Martha's original recipe, the one she's been known for. And now compare that to what Meghan put out. The similarities are too obvious to ignore. I mean, come on. If you're going to copy someone, maybe don't pick a woman who's built her entire career on being the queen of home and lifestyle.
But that's the only difference. I mean, bloomin' heck. It's just the cheek of this woman to rip people off and think that we're not going to realize. Because it isn't just Martha Stewart, is it? She also ripped off Pamela Anderson's cooking series, which I think looked much more genuine, actually, because it was made with genuine love rather than Meghan's sort of faux love, I guess. But I just think when you've got Martha Stewart, who is meant to be the woman who you are emulating, saying, my recipe is the original and the best, it's like, whoa, this is war. And I know there's only going to be one winner here, Angela, and it's not going to be Ms. Sussex. I mean, Martha Stewart's not the type of person who you want to mess with, right? She's been doing this for her whole life.
Quite right. But Dr. Max, who's from the Mayor,
Dr. Max Pemberton.
Yes. He said that everything Meghan's done, she's so tense. She's not really enjoying it. She's saying what's there very, very quickly. She's not actually relaxing. I mean, some of the people should just relax if they make a mistake. Who cares? It doesn't matter. This is not a competition. It is, she's not enjoying it. It's just really, really stressful for her. And I think the way you've seen from the other women that she's copying, they're really enjoying it. They're doing it softly and gently, almost as if they love it and love them, and they're making it as nice as possible. Where she's going, we put this here, we put this there, and you can see that it's so important to her that it has no fun really. She keeps saying it's fun, but it's not fun. You can see that she's very stressed. And I think that's what you do when
Yeah,
you try
very
and
true.
overtake someone else.
You just have no confidence in her. That's the problem. You have zero confidence in the fact that she knows at all what she's talking about and what she's doing. And actually, if I could have given any constructive criticism about the series, and of course, Angela was here for our big review of the series, and we have watched every single minute of every single episode so that you don't have to.
I'm still tired.
Yes, I know. It definitely took its toll, didn't it? Took its toll. So you can go back and watch that. But I guess if I could have given any constructive advice about the series, Angela, it was that Meghan actually was much more confident when she was playing assistant to the chefs who she looked up to, the people who actually knew what they were doing, rather than bossing around her hapless friends who are clearly terrified of her, Angela.
Look at this. Same process, nearly identical ingredients, even the plating is the same. The only real difference? Meghan sliced the tomatoes in half. Well, groundbreaking. And get this, it's not just Martha Stewart. Meghan has also been accused of ripping off Pamela Anderson's cooking series. And let's be real, Pamela's show actually had heart. It felt authentic. Meanwhile, Meghan's version? It just screams corporate rebrand, rather than something that comes from actual passion. See the difference?
Well, they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. I think they've been given a script. They have to say everything's wonderful. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And they have to say, this is amazing. It's that. And it's not saying, gosh, I don't know if that's all right. Do you think I should have that? I'm not really keen on spaghetti on top of tomatoes. I prefer them to be in a saucepan and then just use the water. Those sort of things. No. You're not allowed to, you see. I mean, some of them were paid money because they were working for her, so they're bound not to say anything. Him, otherwise they'd be Martin, isn't it? They'd be sent out, So it's all phony, and I think, why did she do it now? I mean, you can't even order anything. You don't know. You can't get them yet. You can't actually make people feel, oh, that looks wonderful. I hope I can get a copy of that or a pot of this. But you can't get anything, so you're denied the real pleasure of it, because you can just see pain and anguish from her.
It is really interesting, Angela, that do you know this was the one pot pasta, or whatever it's called, was the only, or one of the only recipes that she didn't make available at all. And I think that's because she knows that it just came ripped off from Martha Stewart. But where she is so lacking in class, and where I think, Angela, people would give her much more of a pass, is if she just say during the show, I've been really inspired by Martha Stewart. I look up to her. Clearly, I'm now trying to do a similar thing. This is my version of her iconic recipe. And I think people would respect that. Give credit where credit's due. There's nothing worse than people stealing ideas, but I think it comes from her complete lack of confidence, because she knows she's a pretender. She can't really cook. She doesn't really cook. Whereas Martha Stewart was like the true doyenne of this.
She said she doesn't like baking and she doesn't like doing something else. Yeah. And I thought, well, what does she like then? What does she enjoy? Putting leaves in
and she doesn't like eating. I mean, this is an interesting thing too. Look, to me, you know how much I love my food, Angela, and I think she's definitely someone you can tell by her choices. She doesn't like her food, okay, because there is one too many crudité boards. And can I just say, Angela Levin is also a bit of a doyenne, a lifestyle doyenne. I found out for myself last weekend, because Angela hosted me for my very own little birthday tea party, and it was beautiful, Angela. And you are such a great host and such a great chef. But what I am so pleased to report, Angela, is that there was not one edible flower in sight. Because I think I would have had to be out the door, Angela, if you pulled out your little with love edible flowers. But you were very
Yeah,
good.
quite right.
Do you
I
know
would have
what you're
been out the
talking
door.
about?
Don't worry, don't worry. Oh, thank you. That's very nice of you. It was
No,
lovely having you.
it was absolutely beautiful. Now, Angela, this new book really is diving in deep to Prince Harry and King Charles' childhood. And they say inside Prince Harry's indulgent childhood and why Charles now regrets how he raised him. Royal expert reveals if the king had been firmer with his son during his early years, he might not have caused him so much worry now. Now, this book, Angela, is written by Ingrid Stewart, the long-time royal author who is the editor of Majesty magazine. She claims Charles was an indulgent father who let Harry get away with too much. You're obviously Harry's biographer, and you think this is quite an unfair take in this new book.
Pamela's show is raw, real, and filled with nostalgia. Meghan's, it feels like an overproduced ad campaign. Now tell me, why didn't she give any credit to Martha or Pamela? Even a simple "inspired by" would have gone a long way. But nope. It's just another example of her trying to pass something off as her own. Now this is where it gets brutal. The internet wasted no time roasting Meghan for this. People are calling her out left and right, saying she's always trying to repackage other people's work and slap her name on it. Look at this. Someone even said, Meghan is like that student who copies your homework but changes one word so the teacher doesn't notice. I mean, tell me that isn't accurate.
I think it's one of the most unfair things I've ever seen. I like her very much, but I think that that's ridiculous. The tongue out. Harry did that a lot because all the photographers used to go up to him and put out their tongues because that was the only way they were going to get a picture. And every time he did it, he was told off. But that's what he knew they did. It wasn't really dreadful. You know, he's just a little boy. William would tell him off all the time, but he took no notice of that. What's very interesting is that I think to say that Prince Charles, as he was then, wasn't, he was too kind and too easygoing is nonsense, because if you think of what the boys had suffered, made them so vulnerable that actually I don't think you should then be hard and difficult and make sure what they did. I mean, I wrote my biography, as you know, and one of the things that was really important was that Diana really made their lives very difficult. You know, when she had a boyfriend, which she often put in the boot of her car and took it out and showed the children, you know, it was James Hewitt, it was Dr. Hasnat Khan, it was Will Carling, and Dodie. There were all these men, and she used to say to the children, which I find unbelievable, would you like them as a daddy instead of your own daddy? You see, and I think that is just dreadful. And Diana couldn't understand that she was damaging them. And Harry adored James Hewitt because he was in the army and he bought him a tiny little outfit that he could wear. And they were together for several years. But then he went, and then another man went, and another one. So for a child, you get this feeling of abandonment. And so you become very, very difficult to deal with. And I think that Diana took him to a psychologist twice. In my knowledge, he might have gone on other things. And they said that the ongoing conflict between parents can affect a child's mental health, the development of their social, emotional skills, academic attainment, and all that sort of thing. And I think that she was responsible for making them in such a bad way. She loved them, but then the next minute there was one man there and another man. And I think it's very, very difficult indeed. And according to a clinical psychologist, I know, who talked about this with me a long time ago now, you know, a young person who loses a parent suddenly, unexpectedly, often finds it very difficult to cope with the intense emotion that arises. So if you have a father who's telling you off and being very strong-minded, I think that a child so vulnerable would feel even worse because he would feel he's not even more loved. His mother has died, and who's going to care for him? But I think all that in the beginning, and also Harry was drinking alcohol from the age of 11. And he went out in boats, and Diana knew this, and he was drinking things. So he was very, very unstable. And I think that you don't then handle that on to the father. King Charles loved his children. He might not have done it properly because he hadn't had the experience with his own mother, the late Queen Elizabeth, because she wasn't so emotional. But he didn't know quite what to do. And I think it was very, very hard for him. But he did something that was marvelous for Harry.
At this point, it's becoming a pattern. First, she was accused of stealing elements from Princess Diana for her brand, then Oprah's interview style, then Pamela Anderson's show, and now Martha Stewart's recipes? When does it stop? This is why this whole situation matters. Hollywood doesn't like liabilities. When you constantly get caught in scandals, when you lose credibility, you become toxic. And that's exactly what's happening to Meghan and Harry. Netflix and Spotify already dropped them because they weren't delivering. And now, if Meghan's big lifestyle rebrand starts off with a plagiarism scandal? Yikes. That's not a good look. The numbers don't lie. Their approval ratings are sinking, their deals are drying up, and even their Hollywood allies are distancing themselves. Maybe that's why Meghan felt the need to borrow some ideas?
When it came up to half term and he had to work and he had to go to Africa and he didn't know what to do, and you can't just leave your staff. So he suggested Harry went to Africa, and he went to see this place where all the children who had parents had been very ill and died. They were all there, and he worked there for a couple of weeks and loved it. And then he went to meet up the girls in the what are they? They were also very popular there. No, it doesn't matter, but they were there. And he said it was the best thing in his life.
Oh, not the Spice Girls.
Yes, the Spice Girls. Thank you very much. I'm not up to all that. And he said that he's had the best day of his life. So that was the king, and not yet, but the prince then, trying to make things nice for him. But you don't have to necessarily hug children or be strict with them, but you have to show that you care. And he did that. And I think he did his best. And I think it's very cruel to say that when he still is doing his best. And it's Harry that's being so difficult.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, what a great picture that was. They absolutely adored him as well, the Spice Girls. They've always had that special connection actually with him. I think what's really interesting in your analysis, Angela, is that a lot of people have always said that it was William who was more impacted by Diana and by Diana's behavior, because Diana certainly treated William more like a friend and Harry was younger. But your contention is no, Harry was also very impacted by what was going on in her life.
Oh, yes, very at different levels. With William, he became a sort of the man of the house, as she said. And he would, if you remember, pushed tissue paper under the bathroom door, which she'd locked herself in, that would help her cry because she was crying so much and screaming. And she really, really needed him. And as a child, he was very unhappy because he didn't know how he could help her, because he was only a young boy. And how do you know what to do for a mother who's screaming? I think it was very difficult for both of them in their different ways. But I think it's wrong to blame Charles for either of them. They adored Diana, but somehow she didn't understand exactly how to be. When she was good, she was very, very good. And when she would bring home men and suggest that they might be their fathers, I think that's despicable.
So here's the real question. Does Meghan actually believe she's being original? Or does she think people won't notice? Because trust me, people notice. And when Martha freaking Stewart, has to update her recipe just to remind people that she is the original, you know you've messed up. At this rate, Meghan and Harry are running out of allies. Hollywood is ruthless, and once people stop seeing you as an asset, they drop you like a bad investment. Will Meghan's career survive another hit? Only time will tell.
Really fascinating stuff. Really fascinating stuff. Okay, well, that is Prince Harry's biographer, Angela Levin, saying quite clearly that that new book may not be totally correct because
Well, it's not my view of it. It's not my view of it, and I don't. And I also think that you can't blame a man for that, because you're not there at that time and you don't know exactly what was needed. And I think it's a terrible thing to do. That's really what I feel. Yes.
No, very, very interesting. Very, very interesting, because Ingrid Stewart wrote, had Charles been firmer with Harry and to some extent William in their formative years, they might not have caused him so much worry. She says he was an indulgent father, and she says it was how Harry chose to see himself, and he has allowed this perception to dominate his life to the extent that he has now made a career out of it, choosing to be seen as a victim. He has tried to wreak vengeance on his family and the press for all the slights he believed he suffered, and much of his ire has been directed at his elder brother. But
let me just tell you, shall I just
please
tell you one more thing? There was a pub very, very close to Eton where he went to school, and he used to go there, and there were 2 or 3 men who would give him loads and loads of nasty things to drink and smoke and all that sort of stuff. And they were asked by various people to go and tell his father that he's taking very, very strong drugs. And Harry said to them, if he did, he would say that that's not true. And they realized that meant they would lose their job. So it took one of them to be very brave and say to Charles what had happened. And Charles was absolutely shocked. And that way he was then looking after him a bit more, but he had no idea this was carrying on. And you can't expect out of the blue to somebody to think that they're doing the right thing when they don't even know what's going on. But he was a very naughty boy, and deliberately difficult.
He was indeed. And of course, for a very long time as well, Prince William did cover up for Harry, which is why I think the betrayal, Angela, that would come post Meghan with those revelations in Spare, knowing full well that William was unable to respond, is what is just so hurtful. But absolutely fascinating. No one knows Prince Harry better than Angela Levin, his biographer, and our royal mastermind. Thank you so much, Angela, and we will speak later in the week.
All right, folks, that's it for today's reaction. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button, subscribe for more no BS commentary, and drop a comment below. Do you think Meghan deliberately copied Martha Stewart, or is this just a coincidence? Let me know what you think.